So we'll give it some time. So I think we are live, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. For our case, it is good evening, right? It is 8 o'clock. Is it, Fabi?
Yes, that's correct. Good evening, everyone. And thank you for inviting me tonight, Ivan. And whoever's watching us right now, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're part of. I hope you're having a great day and staying safe. You know,
Staying
it's
safe,
been
yes.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been crazy. So let me introduce you, Fabi. I believe you are in the field of human resources, leadership, soft skills, and mental wellness. Um,
Yes,
you are also right now you're the country head slash human resources director of Dentsu International, right?
that's correct. That's correct.
And you're also a host for Pinoy Kayamon Yan. Do I say it well?
Yeah, you
Um,
say it well. It sounds
I say
very
it well.
naturally Filipino.
Which is a community service, um, which does what exactly?
I had a radio show 2 years ago. It's called Pinoy Kaya Mo Yan. It's empowering the Filipinos to be the best version of themselves. It's an hour program that's over the AM radio with a famous radio station called DWIZ here in the Philippines. And
Yeah.
then after 2 years and a half, we moved the show using Facebook Live until roundabouts of December or November last year. But I'm trying to reformat it right now. So when it's already for reformatted, because I had another vision for it. I hope to invite you there because we also talk about a lot of different issues, but mainly it's really empowerment of our Filipino brothers and sisters here in the Philippines. That's why it's really vernacular. Pinoy kaya mo yans mean Filipinos, you can do it. So it's all about empowerment.
And I think during this time, it's a very relevant topic and something that a lot of people need.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've noticed that people are really affected with the pandemic, and so there are a lot of things that has been impacted: work, um, and mental resilience, our toughness. It's really a test because some of us has lost their job, some of us lost our loved ones, our
Yes.
friends. Some of us hasn't seen their parents for a year and a half. I know someone they haven't seen their parents for a year and a half because
Yeah, I
they're
haven't seen my
yeah.
parent for like 18 months.
Oh yeah. See, it's really difficult, challenging, and a test of resilience. And I think we have to look at the noble cause of what we need to sacrifice for a while. It's really for the
Yes.
safety.
Yes. So today we are here to talk about how to lead, empower, manage, develop sales teams. And if you allow me to say, leading teams is challenging. Leading sales teams, it's even more challenging. Leading remote sales teams is the ultimate challenge.
I
Um,
absolutely agree.
Especially in Asia. Asia is the landscape of, it's a BPO, call center, service center landscape, right? Like I don't know how many hundreds of thousands. I know in the Philippines, thousands of BPOs, thousands of call centers, thousands of outsourced companies and big companies. I know Shell. They have a big outsourced call center in Makati, in Salcedo, HSBC, and financial companies. So all these companies were kind of forced, really forced, to move their teams remotely. So talking from experience, I'm an executive coach, but I also run companies. And right now I am managing a company in Malaysia, and some of my staff work remotely, and I can say it has been challenging. For me, not so much, but for some of them, for staff, it has been challenging because, while they work, their kids running around. Number one, sometimes they're not used to. So it is challenging both from employer, leader, manager point of view, but also from employee point of view. But today we are here to talk about employer point of view, right? From a managerial aspect point of view. So, what are your thoughts on an overview of leading teams in a remote environment? And specifically, maybe you can talk about sales teams, because I know you have managed sales teams before and financial sales teams as well, right?
Yes, that's correct. Well, you know what? I've been with the business process outsource, some of the companies you've mentioned. I was part of developing their learning and development departments way back in 2004. And I have also been part of a shared service where we set up the ones in the Philippines, and we replaced European countries and America's region, because of course we place all the English skills or English skilled employees here in the Philippines, and we hire them. One thing I could say, my thoughts about this are several issues or several factors we have to consider working remotely. And I think primarily number one is technology. I think that there's a big struggle depending on where you are, what part of Asia Pacific you are, where we struggle to be really good at our technology, because I used to have even my own radio show. I was mentioning this prior to our topic, right? You know what? I was in the middle of a show like this, and suddenly I just totally lost on broadcast. And since then, I felt so traumatic, and I felt that I shouldn't do any show anymore that's live because of that issue. So one is technology. Second, it's the mindset. Not everybody is comfortable working from home. Not everybody has that mindset before of thinking that they would be able to work effectively away from the people that, especially if you're a micromanager and you want your people around you all the time, you want to know what's going on around you. I think it's also the mindset. And I think number three is also it's really more about the condition of our employees as to how they would be able to balance their life and their work in this kind of environment. And as a psychologist, as an HR practitioner, I found it initially so challenging for our employees to adjust in this kind of situation. And so managers themselves had to go through a lot of programs, coaching programs, or making some realization as to how to make it work. I think those are my top three things that I would say the elements that we need to look into if you're an employer. It's the technology, the mindset, and likewise the mental well-being of your teams working in this kind of setup.
I think you hit the nail in the head. Technology, mindset, and balance. And I think Philippines should improve a little bit on technology, especially the internet. How are things? I think things are getting better.
I don't think so, because there was even a ranking actually, even years ago, before, prior to the pandemic, they were ranking the Philippines as one of the worst bandwidth in terms of internet. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say that, but it's fact. I mean,
It is.
we
It
had,
is. I mean, it
yeah.
is. I've experienced that myself. It is.
Yeah,
Uh,
so I think there's an area for improvement there. That's why there
yes.
are some telecoms companies that are recently being set up and open in the Philippines. When Jack Ma came to the Philippines, he said,
Yes. That's
Philippines
right.
has
He
so
said
much.
it.
He said that. He said,
Yes.
Philippines has such great potential. You have good people. We speak really well in terms of our language. We can have a
Yes.
different accent if you want to.
Yes.
But the problem is the technology part. When you
Yes.
don't have the tool of trade, what's the point, right? How would you be able to invest? So I think if there's an opportunity for us to fix the technology part, there will be more investments in the Philippines. But if there is is this kind of issue ongoing that everything's expensive because I've compared internet services with other countries, and we have expensive internet services
It is
compared
expensive,
to other
yes, and
countries,
yes,
right?
it is expensive. Yes, it is expensive, and even things, even life is getting more expensive. Even grabbing a coffee, I remember a few years ago. Now it's not any different. But Philippines and in general, I mean, we're not here talking about the Philippines now. We're talking about how to manage, but in general, Asia, if you look from India, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, all these Southeast Asian countries, they have a huge amount of talent in terms of people. So let's talk a little bit about the mindset, and a little bit about communication. I do believe that when it comes to communicating with remote teams, it is better to over communicate than under communicate. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Especially if you're working remotely. Can you just imagine when you are not able to check in with your people on a daily basis? Well, I'm not expecting people to be always being monitored, but I think there's a big push. There's an opportunity for managers to check on their people, especially when just to share with you, when we started the lockdown in the Philippines in the pandemic last year, starting March 15 onwards. It was a big adjustment for all of us, and
Yes.
I think that people were lost because we were more on face-to-face management, teamwork, leadership, and we build relationships using communication that are building relationships through face-to-face encounters. We're used to that, and this kind of system that we have was just secondary, but we had to really make those adjustments. And I think over communication, to your point, is I feel a much better way of being able to understand what's going on with your teams, know where they are right now, know how you could be able to support them better. So I believe so that there's such thing as good over communication, but I also believe that there should be a balance, because if there's like over communication, sometimes it could also become a manifestation of lack of trust. So I think needs to be a balance. There needs to be a way for us to communicate effectively, but also the timing and the scope of it needs to be also needs to be determined.
You touched two of the points which I made a note is bad is you said it before me. You mentioned the word trust, which is connected with the word that you said before, a micromanager. And I do believe that if before the pandemic, you had really built trust among your team members. If they trust you and you trust them, now you will have a much less harder time to manage people. And vice versa, if you were a micromanager and trust was really low, I don't want to be in your position, because
Mm-hmm.
you will find it really hard to check in on your people, and what time do they wake up, what time do they do this, what time do they do that. So I think if the managers and the leaders that they were really doing the right things prior to the pandemic, yes, they will have challenges now, but not so much as somebody who was really a micromanager and with a binocular all the time above its people. Let's move on to KPIs, because you said balance, micromanagement, trust. Salespeople need to hit targets, unfortunately or fortunately. And sometimes some people, they work from home, they have a dedicated work office. Some of them, their work desk is their kitchen table, and they have kids running around. So as a leader, what kind of KPIs would you be setting with your people when they work in an unsupervised environment and when they work at home and when they have kids running around. So as a leader, what do? Do you step back and you give them time, or you still set KPIs?
You know what? It's this is so relevant because I just actually advised a friend of mine with regard to his business. What's exactly the same manner because he's a traditional owner where he expects his people to be in the office, and they were into some dry goods, and they have to be able to get clients on a daily basis by visiting them, by doing the usual traditional cold calling. And so when we had a talk a few months ago, I mentioned that I think that we need to also change that kind of approach because it will not be it's working hard, not working smart at all. And I mentioned to him that there should be a way for you, if you're into sales, to use the time to be able to, number one, is to be able to get clients in such a manner and require your people to have a certain number of clients. So I actually suggested that there's a sales funnel that you could be using, starting off with, suspects. Everybody can be a suspects. If you're selling, for example, a product which is, let's say, you're selling a product, let's say, into baby clothes. Okay, let's just say that is an example. Now, not everyone could be a suspects because your suspects will all be mothers, right? And then it boils down to your prospects, and then later on, after your prospects, who are those people that who could initially buy, and then eventually who are those people who will be your customers and then repeat customers. So I lay down that you could be able to implement this kind of funnel because I believe in sales, the more prospects you have, the more chances that you will be able to close a sale, right? So I came from real estate, and
Yeah.
I only believe that you will be able to close a sale not is so one is to one. You don't expect that you just because I showed to you, let's say, a property, even that I expect that you would be buying. So the more expensive the product is or the services, the more it will be challenging for you to get that deal. It will be one is to 100, I can tell you. One sale out of 100 prospects.
Yes,
Now,
that could be the case for some, yeah, for some industries. Let's say, for example, in the financial services industry, sometimes it's 3%. So
correct, it's really
out of
low.
100 leads, maybe you have 3%, three people that buy, and
Uh,
maybe one, maybe two, maybe, if you do 5%, five closes, five clients out of 100, consider good. So please continue. Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel that when I was mentioning this kind of idea to him, and he totally agreed to this, we looked into what could be done in terms of making sure that people would be able that salespeople would be able to sell effectively and use their time wisely. So what I suggested was KPIs needs to be changed in such a way that you need to push them to have at least 10 prospects a day, which I think is doable. 10 prospects, meaning 10, people that you can really trust. I'm very ambitious when it comes to that because I feel that the more prospects you have, let me just reiterate, the more you'll be able to have the chance to get that one deal. So,
Yes.
what he did was really propose a prospect funnel where they need to submit proposals and give a copy to one tabulator, and then later on do a follow up. And it worked effectively because the KPIs of monitoring the prospects, giving a quota not only on the sales but on the manner of how you will be able to get their clients remotely, helped a lot, right? Really, that helped a lot. So how did the salespeople do it? They really leverage on social media. They leverage on LinkedIn. They leverage in creating their own websites. Everything was pretty creative because they this product that they were selling was had a niche market, and they had to be able to target the right, market, and they had to learn how to even market using all this social media. So I feel that the KPIs when you're working remotely needs not to be rigid. You'll have to be flexible and you need to be open. And I don't believe that you have to be very strict about it and rigid, because as a leader, you also have to be leading with compassion. And I believe that to become an effective leader, it's not all about your ROI. Yes, you need to get sales, but you also need to also look into your salespeople need to be your ambassadors of your products. You can't have people who are depressed selling your products. I always teach that when I train. Your salespeople are your ambassadors of your product. If they don't feel good about themselves, they won't represent your company, your product, or your service very well. They will not be happy with their job. So your KPIs should be a tool for them to motivate them to get over to that objective, but should not limit them and should not be their source of fear, that in their mind, okay, I need to get sales because I might lose my job, compared to this is my objective, because once I get this objective, I will be rewarded and I still get to keep my job. So there's two differences there. So I feel that the KPIs is a way for you guys to really use that to motivate your teams, rather than a stick where people will get demotivated and be fearful about it. And I've seen how some companies failed. I've seen how companies have also changed. What do you think about that, Fabi?
Well, your internet is a bit lagging, so I am waiting for you to catch up. Um, let's wait a little bit.
There.
Yeah, so there you are. You are back. So, um, I remember when I was managing people back in the UK around 10 years ago. My management style was more like carrot and stick and more rah 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 kind of person. But it worked because that was the economy, that was the style, that was a different era. It worked. Now it doesn't work.
It doesn't.
Now what works is, especially remotely, is a different attitude, a higher emotional intelligence, and
Agree.
and
Mm.
to really to get to know your people. For example, let's say you have an employee that is shifting to work from home. The first thing that I suggest that leaders and managers should do is to ask themselves, what is the biggest worry right now for that person when they work from home? You know, is it how are they going to manage their kids? Is it you will be surprised. Like what I did for one of my staff 2 weeks ago is I upgraded his internet connection at home. I basically paid $50 extra for him to get better internet because his internet was very basic. So how did I find out? I just had a one-on-one real conversation as a manager, but in a really friendly environment. And I told him, listen, you're going to work from home. What do you need? And I asked good questions in a conversational way, and the guy opened up because, he was a little bit shy to tell me that his internet wasn't really the best, because, so I think the management style that is needed right now is one-on-one, really for the manager to know its people, what are they scared of, in what kind of environment they live in, are they single, do they live alone, do they have kids, is their partner working from home while they work from home, what kind of job their partner do, and all these kind of things. So you really need to get to know your people. And if you're managing, let's say, a very big department of 100 people, you really need to know the life of your direct reports. And then what you need to do you need to teach them, if they don't know, how to know the life of their direct reports. So you really need to have meaningful one-on-one conversations with your team to get to know your people.
Totally
Um,
agree with that.
so,
Yeah.
so you
Mhm.
really need to be a sales guy. Like the same thing that you do in sales, maybe as a CEO, as a leader, you really need to ask good questions, to listen and to understand the lifestyle, the needs, and the wants of your employees, just as you would if they were clients of your company, potential clients.
Mhm.
Because the way talking from experience, and in this video, we're not here to tell people what to do. We're here to share our practical experiences in order to hopefully help people who struggle with remote teams management. So this is my suggestion. You really get to know your people. And I'm not talking about strategic steps here, setting the vision, setting the mission, because maybe the environment right now is a little bit uncertain for you to set the vision for 5 years down the line. But now is the time to really get to know your people, engage them, motivate them, and bring them with you along this challenging time. So I think effective leaders and managers, in order to manage remote sales team, we really need good people skills.
Agree on that. I think you hit the nail too when you say EQ. It's not about IQ. It's not about just always results, but nowadays it's hard enough to be working from home. It's hard enough to know that, let's say, your relative, for example, or your mother is in the hospital and you're at home waiting for the results of your mother. Just like one of my staff recently has told me that the mother is positive. And you know what? My staff is still working and diligently taking care of all our requirements. But I empathized. I think that's one word and one powerful value for leaders to practice. It's not just about making them work hard and delivering results, but it's understanding their needs. So I was just talking to him this morning, and we had deliverables. We're doing our salary review structure, and he is my technology guy, and then been asking him to help me out. But I have to also understand that he is not psychologically 100% okay, because his mother is in the hospital and is described to be recovering from COVID, right? And I could just imagine and empathize what he's going through. But despite that, I had to encourage him that your mother's in good hands. Let's make sure that we work on this. And if there's any support you need from me, I will be giving this to you. And I don't want you to worry about anything else because we're here for you. I had to assure them, I had to assure him of this kind of things. But makes me wonder how other people are doing so, because we have different ways, we have different empathy levels and EQ. Some people don't, some people have it, and some people have different leadership styles. And we're, to your point, we're not here to preach what is right or wrong, but I think we need to be open minded as to how we can manage our teams to become effective, because it's hard enough to be in this situation of the pandemic, to be delivering our work effectively and delivering results and getting all those sales and hitting the quota. So there's a lot of multitasking that needs to be done. And if you're a mother, you can imagine that the child is in one corner, and you need to cook for your husband too, and all that. It's really a lot of balancing act for everyone nowadays. So we have to also ask our leaders to be more flexible, open-minded, have an openness of compassion, before even looking at the results, of course, because of course it has to be done also.
I think coaching skills are essential.
Yeah.
It used to be manager, then leader. I think a lot of coaching skills are essential nowadays. What is your take on virtual meetings? How often should let's say you're managing a mid-sized team. Let's say you're managing a company, a team, a department, or of 50 people, 50. What is your suggestion? From your experience on virtual meetings, how often should the leader initiate, per week, for example?
I feel that you need to have virtual meetings with your team, but you have to make it sure that it's worth their time, because
Yes,
there are some meetings that just goes on and on. I've attended one time, we had a planning meeting, and I was telling our admin assistant, please make sure that you chunk it into 4 hours or 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, because you know what, the attention span of every individual is 40 minutes maximum. 12 minutes even is the average, 40 minutes maximum. And with all the virtual meetings that you attend a day, and all
yes.
the usual social media that you're watching, you're reading, and all that, with all the distractions, I don't know how they could focus. Because I myself, even sometimes I have meetings, I'm doing multitasking, looking at my phone, fiddling on that. I feel that we need to make sure that it's worth the time of every individual. You need to be sticking to the agenda so that it doesn't waste the time, and respect everyone's time also. Number two is making sure that there's also an element of fun, because it's so essential that you build rapport with your teams
I was
despite.
about to say this. I was about to say about icebreakers, maybe a little bit of fun. So yeah, go on.
Yeah, I actually ask some philosophical questions from my team. Like, I ask them, what have you learned after 12 months, after this pandemic? What have you learned after 12 months? Things like that. Or what are you simply cooking? Can you show me your house? Things like this. These are
Yes.
small details that are fun to know about. We can also do a tour of home if they're comfortable showing their home. But some of them are not really comfortable even opening their camera. So
Camera, yeah.
I feel that virtual meetings, it's so essential that there's a camera, because it at least gives that visual effect that you know who you're talking to. You can have the facial expression, because in communication, remember, it's 70-20-10. 70% is the body language, 20% is how you say it, 10% is words.
What you
So
say, yes.
yeah,
Yes.
so I think that we need to be looking into that structure, that face to face communication can be done also using virtual meetings.
Um, let's talk a little bit about another maybe 5, 10 minutes before we wrap up. Managing remote sales teams. Sales people, marketing people are creative people.
Mm-hmm.
What do I mean creative?
Yes.
You may be an IT guy, a developer, a coder. You are creative. I'm not saying that you are
Yeah.
not creative, but sales and marketing are different kind of people. A bit more not extrovert or introvert, but they like to communicate, and they without an they like to go to the office, and without now when they work from home, without an office filled with people, if they work remotely, so they don't have the opportunity to make small talk with colleagues. How are you? Have a quick chat over the coffee area in the pantry. They don't have the opportunity to ask questions. So how can a leader create an inclusive culture environment? This is my question. How can you make people feel inclusive and engaged when they work from home?
I feel that you know what, as a leader, you are responsible for a lot of things, right? Because
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
nowadays there's such thing as diversity, inclusion, and belongingness. Diversity is the current situation. Inclusion is something that you should be doing in terms of how would you be able to get your team members to feel that they belong. And belongingness is subjective, because an individual's belonging feeling differs from each other.
Yes.
So I feel, to your point a while ago, how do you make everyone be part of a team and feel that they belong? It's really establishing a relationship. It's constant communication. It's building trust. It's understanding where they are, how you could be
So the
helping.
little things really.
Yeah, it's the small things that counts. It's knowing them at a personal level. And actually, what we also did in my organization, we created sort of like an AI technology, just finding out how our teams are. We also had surveys to ensure we measured their mental wellness, how they are, and we even gave them a support of getting psychologists and psychiatrists to ensure that people who were isolated, especially those who were living alone in Manila, who are actually from the provinces,
Yeah.
we could be able to reach out to them. So the AI technology was like a secretary on Viber or on website, and they could chat with that. And we have to be creative. We cannot be just relying on certain ways of communicating, but we have to go out of our way to find ways to make sure that, hey guys, we're here for you. And if you're a manager yourself and if you're lost, you can't pour from an empty cup. So you need to take care of yourself first. So for managers out there, I feel that you need to check on yourself first, because if you cannot be able to be a positive influence to your team, if you yourself don't feel good about yourself, I need to also stress that it's self-care. It starts with you as a leader. You cannot lead teams if you yourself can take care of yourself.
And listen, leading yourself is the most challenging thing.
Oh yeah.
It is easier to lead others,
Totally.
but when it comes to you, it's very challenging. Yesterday I was talking about, I did a monologue live yesterday, and I talked about how to resolve conflict as a manager. And one of the points I shared is lead by example. Because sometimes I've noticed that sometimes managers and leaders, because of ego, because of frustration, because of micromanagement, because of stress, because they need to deliver results, they are the ones who actually create the conflicts
Mm-hmm.
among team members. Conflicts don't exist, but the manager, because of different reasons, create the conflict themselves. So how can you take care of yourself as a manager when you are also human? Maybe you have pressure from above. Maybe you also work from home. Maybe your kids running around. What do you do?
For me, if when it comes to self-care, I have a program on this. Hopefully we can get to talk about it, but I just to give you some tips about,
Yeah.
if you're a manager, what are some practical tips for self-care. I have what we call acronym called BTOF. It starts with letter B, breathing techniques. I don't know if you've heard about how powerful
Yes.
breathing techniques are. You need to be able to learn how to breathe well, because when you're stressed, we tend to not breathe properly. Don't you notice this one is kind of slightly up? It's a light slightly higher, and this part needs would be in pain all the time, or the shoulder. It's because of our not being able to breathe well, because we've forgotten how to breathe. So that's one thing. You need to be able to know how to breathe well. Breathing exercise, meditation counts. That helps a lot. I do a lot of yoga and meditation. And this has helped me a lot, because I believe that our mind is just so powerful that we have so many things around it. And so we have to be able to at least reboot it. Just like how we recharge our phones, our laptops, our mind needs to do that too. And there are simple things you need to take care of, like your diet, the food you take. Are you the type who will always drink coffee every single day? Because I don't really drink caffeine. I feel that it impacts the way you are drinking coffee right now. Are you water?
It
I feel
sometimes
that
sometimes I when I do videos, I always use this cup. Sometimes it's wine, sometimes it's beer. If it was, I wouldn't show you. But today is water. It's
it's
not vodka. It's
water.
water.
Okay,
Water.
so I feel that self care, basic things, the nutrition that you have, the exercise that you should be getting, the sunlight that you should be getting, going out for a walk, and taking a break primarily, because as a manager, myself, even if I'm a psychologist, I'm not bulletproof. We all have to uh, practice self care, because no one else will take care of yourself except you, right? So you have to be taking care of yourself physically, emotionally, spiritually. These are some tips that I actually share when it comes to self care. And do not put pressure so much on yourself, because perfection is not the ideal way to go, but learning from mistakes and being able to be flexible and forgiving yourself for mistakes is okay. So I would also say it's okay not to feel okay as a manager, whether you're a manager, an employee. We're all human beings, and I think we need to embrace certain emotions. It's okay whether you're a guy. It's okay that you cry, because our society has always taught us, oh, you're a guy, you have to be strong. This macho image that you need to keep. But you know what? In the end, we're all human beings. It's okay. And there's a lot of cases of suicides all over the world because of this situation.
Yes,
Now
we
is the
just don't
time.
see. Yes, we don't see that if the media is not covering. But unfortunately, that's true.
Yeah, and you know what? Some of them are successful males, successful females, lawyers, businessmen,
Yes,
and they
yes,
get. And then you realize money is not the only thing, actually, because we always think that if you don't have enough money, if I have more money, I'll be happier. But you realize that even Jim Carrey, he himself has said that I
yes,
wish that people will be given their wishes to have all the money, to make them understand that money and position is not the only thing that will make people happy. But bottom line, it's the relationships that you have, the relationships that surround you with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues. These are more essential matters that money can't buy. So I feel that self-care is really taking care of yourself in the basic necessities and the relationship, going back to basics, like the Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? It's food, relationships, and then it goes to belongingness and so forth and so on, until to self-actualization. And you realize that we have to be taking care of our basic necessities before we even take care of other people. And as a manager, it starts with you.
absolutely. Because the worst thing, this is something that I learned earlier in my career from my leader at the time in the UK. He said, Evan, the first thing that you need to do when you enter your office in the morning before your people come in, go and look yourself in the mirror and look as if it's somebody else and check, how do you look? Are you stressed? Do you look tired? Are you look yourself in the mirror and refresh yourself, and because we often don't see ourselves, right? We don't see ourselves.
Yes.
And sometimes maybe our own emotions could be written everywhere, but other people can see it. So I think you're absolutely right. The worst thing that your employees, the people that you are supposed to lead, one of the worst things that you can do is to see you stressed, tired. As you know, they can see you cry. You can. It's a difference by showing your vulnerability, but by being stressed and tired. Because if I believe that if the people under you see you stressed and tired all the time, guess what? They don't want to do your job. So they might think, well, why I'm staying in this company? So I know the conversation is supposed to be how to manage sales teams, but we moved into general concept of managing teams. So before we wrap up, we're going to have another conversation in the future, maybe in a couple of weeks' time, to talk about another subject. Your final thoughts: managing remote teams, sales, marketing teams. What are your final thoughts? Your final tips? Your final saying?
I think to wrap up and say what would be the most essential factors to summarize pretty much how to manage virtual teams is, I'll wrap it up by starting off with self care. Start with yourself, manage yourself first before you're able to manage people virtually. Make sure that you check on your teams and communicate with them consistently. Ensure that they not only are being checked on the deliverables that you are asking them to do, but you understand how they can be supported, understand what they're going through. I have mentioned this a while ago. In Filipino, we call it malasakit, which is compassion.
Yes,
Make
I'm
sure
aware.
lead with compassion, lead with EQ. EQ is so essential. Um, and I think that when happy people are able to look at your KRAs as a way for them to work hard and not a way for them to be fearful and be demoralized about, I think that you would be able to get to your objectives within a different source of strength, which is really being more positive about it. Lastly, of course, to build a team does not stop you from developing your teams. It's not just about telling them what to do, but you also have to also develop your teams in other skills and ensuring that they're learning something new on a monthly basis, or pushing them to also be accountable to learn something, because there's just so much technology. I mean, we could leverage with that a lot of e-learnings there, a lot of programs like this, a lot of influencers that they could follow. And I feel that in virtual teams, you not only have a chance to be meeting about your deliverables, but also a way for them to develop them and, in the end, triumph as a team. And, I feel that those are the most essential things for me in managing teams virtually.
So self-care, communicate with your team on a personal and professional level, lead with compassion, EQ, and be a coach leader. Develop
Yeah,
your team skills, e-learning, maybe other cross things that they can learn, not just work, work, work. Develop their skills as human beings, I suppose. That's what you're supposed to say.
absolutely. Everybody should be a trainer nowadays. Everybody
Yes.
should be cross-trained nowadays, because there are so many jobs that are no longer relevant and skills that are no longer relevant. So what to do with that as a manager if you know that you have other skills that can be taught to your team so that they could be relevant and their jobs can be saved, and teach those skills.
Maybe you
So,
can teach them how to cycle like you. I forgot to say that you are a keen cyclist, right?
oh yeah, I am a keen cyclist. You've seen that in my social media. I've been
Yes.
cycling. I used to be a triathlete for 10 years. So now I just focus on my cycling and scuba diving and yoga. I
Road
really love
cycling,
this
right?
hobby.
Road
I love
cycling.
so yeah, I have a
Yeah.
number of bikes with me.
Bikes.
So
Yes.
yeah, that's something that I also want to do with my teams. Actually more on yoga, because you can do that virtually, or indoor cycling if they have indoor bikes inside their house.
Well, there is a certain company that is doing really well right now. But we're not going to mention the name to promote an American company with home cycling, I'm sure. And then I think the next one is virtual reality. We're going to be cycling at home, connected to a gym room or to some scenic route. I think this will be the next
Yes,
step.
yes.
And I think it's happening in some places. You buy the glasses and you can choose the route. You can choose where you cycle, next to the beach, on the hills. I think this is the next.
Oh yeah,
Um,
even the Tour de France route, you can do
yes,
it
we can do
nowadays.
it. Yes, excellent.
That's
Fabi,
right.
thank you very much.
And thank you so much for inviting me. It was a pleasure to be, having this meaningful conversation with you. I look forward to having more of this in the future. And more power to you, Ivan. I really enjoyed imparting knowledge and really interesting questions that you've got there, and even your own anecdotes, sharing that is really an exciting thing for me. I've also learned something new today.
Well, hopefully, we added value. So I will see you again in a couple of weeks, 2, 3 weeks
Oh,
time, on a different topic. You said you have a program about which is an acronym, or
be
different
tough.
leadership. Yes, be tough.
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk about this next time.
Yes, wonderful. I look forward to that.
Take care. Good night. Bye for now.
Good night, Ivan. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.